you'll probably be getting some questions in Slack, so you can take a look there. Our next speakers are Niraj and Praveen. So if you would like, you can share your screens. Hello, namaste, welcome. Oh, Niraj, I think, oh, sorry, you're both muted. Can you unmute yourselves?
Hey, Bart.
Hi, Bart. Thank you.
Hello, great to have you
Hello, everyone.
here. Very, very nice to have you here, and very, very nice to have a company such as Flipkart, an e-commerce giant, to be able to talk about their experience of working with data on Kubernetes. So that being said, I will leave it all to you. This is a pre-recorded talk, so folks, if you want to ask questions directly in YouTube, that way they can be able to respond to them like while the talk is going on, but then also we can address them afterwards.
Sure. We have like last 5 minutes to address the questions as well. But yeah, most of the session is anyway recorded. We'll play that one.
Perfect.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's session on Flipkart's stateful story on Kubernetes. A brief look at our agenda today. We'll start with our introductions. We'll talk a bit about Flipkart's infrastructure setup, how our Kubernetes journey has been going so far, the reasons why we decided to migrate our stateful stack onto Kubernetes, what were the challenges we envisioned in this process, what were the different phases for this migration. We'll talk about our partnership with OpenEBS and how they helped us solve this problem. We summarize the current set of affairs and a few key learnings in our journey so far. We'll leave the last few minutes for any questions that we might have. To get introductions out of the way, so as you may or may not know, Flipkart is India's largest e-commerce company, serving millions of customers across thousands of product categories. I'm Neeraj, and I work as an architect in the IAS team at Flipkart. I'm currently leading the effort for building a managed Kubernetes offering within the Flipkart private cloud. My co-presenters today will be Praveen. Praveen is a member of the Kubernetes team, and he is also one of the maintainers of the OpenEBS local PV server. A brief about Flipkart's infrastructure. Flipkart is deployed out of a self-managed private cloud across multiple data centers. Flipkart is predominantly a virtual machine-based deployment, or has been. Our storage is based out of JBOD setup, and we host petabytes of data on this server. In terms of our server footprint, we have more than 20,000 bare metals spread across the 2 data centers. And we spin out more than 75,000 virtual machines on these bare metals. A summary of our Flipkart Kubernetes journey so far. So we started the journey in 2020 with the aim of improving our hardware utilization. So one of the problems that we were facing in our data centers was low server utilization. Using Kubernetes, we wanted to provide a fluid capacity allocation mechanism so that capacity could be shared between different apps during different times of the day. We also wanted to increase developer productivity by adopting the refined cloud-native app model. We wanted to improve our platform and application availability by making use of fault-tolerant constructs in Kubernetes. We also had plans of moving into a hybrid cloud model, and Kubernetes was one way to achieve burstability to public clouds. So as of now, we have migrated 20% of Flipkart's stateless stack onto Kubernetes. And the aim is to have complete Flipkart stateless stack on Kubernetes by September 2021. So foray into stateful. So one question that was asked internally and is also asked within the Kubernetes ecosystem is Kubernetes ready for stateful? So we decided to explore this answer. And the reasons for doing this were as follows. Hybrid cloud readiness. As we mentioned earlier, we have plans to move into public clouds, and we will be operating out of a hybrid cloud model, predominantly on-prem, but bursting into public clouds when needed. So infrastructure abstraction was a key principle that we wanted to rely on, and Kubernetes would provide us that infrastructure abstraction. Another reason for doing this was declarative installation of stateful stacks. So in Flipkart, over a period of years, our stateful stacks are managed by either Ansible script setups or a bunch of bash scripts. And these are procedural in nature and have been geared towards maintaining and updating stateful stacks rather than complete lifecycle management. And we believe Kubernetes declarative deployment model will help us have these installations easily set up in new developer environments and reduce the ETA for new developer environment setup from months to days. We also wanted to increase our availability on the stateful stack, also increase developer productivity. Another key reason for doing this was we wanted to segregate our compute and storage, which is today very hyper-converged, and move storage over network. And we felt that migrating onto Kubernetes will allow easier consumption of these constructs. So some of the challenges that we foresee in doing this migration. So first of all, application porting. So adopting cloud native models is rather seamless for stateless applications since they don't carry any state. For stateful stacks, it's a different story. Pods are much more ephemeral in nature than virtual machines in a private cloud. And both application developers and operators managing these stacks have to adapt to this. Another challenge is the migration process itself. If you were to go with a copy-based migration, one of the principal challenges that we would face is the lack of buffer capacity. As we mentioned, we have petabytes of storage data, and we simply lack the amount of buffer capacity needed to do this migration. So we would have to do this migration in place. Also, copying this data and creating new replicas is operationally time consuming. Along with this, we also cannot afford extended downtime for applications. We also had to make sure that we do not incur any performance penalties on the data path from the get-go. Our existing backup tools also needed to be redesigned for this exercise because they were predominantly designed for a virtual machine setup. And for a container-based setup, we had to redesign our backup tool. Let's talk about the phases for this migration process. So phase one consisted of supporting local persistent volumes. And the primary reason for doing this was that we wanted to maintain status quo on the data path. So as we said, today our virtual machine-based setup run on a hyper-converged model where storage is local to compute. And we wanted to make sure that this data path performance is not something that we wanted to change from the get-go. We wanted our developers and our application stack to make benefit of the control plane, Kubernetes control plane, and get a predictable and consistent I/O performance that they have known. This avoids redesigning and resizing of the stateful stacks. Along with this, we also wanted to make a heavy investment in data store operators. We made it a principle that every stateful stack that was to be onboarded onto Kubernetes will have to come via an operator path. In phase two, we wanted to do compute storage separation. This is where we actually segregate out storage and move it over network. This will probably come with some I/O performance changes. And at this time, users will already be used to Kubernetes constructs. In phase three, we move to software-defined storage constructs. We provide additional capabilities of durable volumes via data replication in the data path, and additional features like data compression and encryption. To talk you through the rest of this presentation today will be my co-presenter, Praveen. So over to you, Praveen. Thank you.
Thanks, Neeraj. This is Praveen here. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's continue the presentation. So this slide actually shows the current state of infrastructure in Flipkart. So you can see we have like, so this is orange color is a Gboard. We can see this is connected to multiple parameters. These green ones are the parameters, and we have multiple VMs running the parameters. And the VMs are being stacked in multiple racks, or multiple VMs is stacked up in a rack. Now, the way current infrastructure works is these VMs are statically provision in the sense like a VM will have a particular instance cut, in the sense like a VM will be allocated a particular amount of CPU and particular amount of memory and a particular amount of storage or type of storage and whatnot, number of disk to the particular VM. There's no way to dynamically adding the CPU or memory to the VM, or dynamically adding disk to the VM, or dynamically increasing the size of the disk attached to the VM. So if the customer want to scale out the VM to a bigger size, they have to create a new VM and migrate the data from the current VM to the new VM. That is a painful experience for customers to move across or to increase the capacity or the type of the VM they have, or increase or change the configuration of the VM they have. The other problem with this current setup is considering we have like a fixed set of parameters connected to the board. If the VMs have been the instance of the VM is if it is heavily CPU skewed, if you use more number of CPUs for less number of storage, there's a good chance like we don't have enough compute to actually provision the storage which is available in the JBoard. So we have seen like significant amount of wastage of storage in multiple JBoards because we don't have enough CPUs in the bare metal, which is actually connected to the JBoard. So to address these limitations and issues, we started we move towards Kubernetes, and we have far more journey to come along. As a first step, so this is the final picture which Flipkart want to get into. We are some level there. The journey is still in progress. So if you see here, so you also can see the bare metals here, and the blue ones are the VMs. But these are actually Kubernetes nodes. So effectively, we have a Kubernetes node. Almost all of the VM parameter resources given to the Kubernetes node. The reason of we having a VM is to make sure like we have easier deployment of Kubernetes in our data center. So if you see here like the blue ones are the Kubernetes nodes, and you'll have like pods running the Kubernetes nodes, and you'll have the CSA provision, storage provision, and the node register to actually provision the underlying storage and create either logical volumes or partitions and mount them to the pods for application to use. So you can see here we are seeing both locally attached storage as well as storage connected over the fabric. But if you see in the locally attached storage, we still since it's already in Kubernetes, the first problem of if the application application users want to change the number of CPU or the amount of memory, or even add increase the logical volume size or the number of disks, they can easily do because it is easily provided via stateful support of Kubernetes of changing this, configuring very minor overhead for customers. They have just seen the manifest and redeployed the application compared to the previous world of migrating data and moving VMs and whatnot. But in a local PV use case, we still have the problem of resource wastage in case if you have pods which is heavily skewed towards CPU. That's the reason we want to connect the storage via network. We plan to use NVMe TCP support protocol for that. In this case, since the storage is connected over network, we have enough compute which can be connected to the same JBoard, and they can drive the store or provision the storage in the JBoard and give access to the pods in the compute. In the final picture, we will be having the local data storage in Flipkart because there are some use cases where the application want a low latency or high throughput use cases. So we will be supporting local PV for those use cases, but predominantly we'll be moving towards NVMe over the TCP use case. So in this journey, we have already done with the local PV use case. Now we are actually working towards storage compute separation using NVMe. So currently, to achieve the local PV use case, we actually partnership with OpenABS. It has been a fantastic journey working with them. When we started, actually, OpenABS was supporting local PV using ZFS as a volume manager to provision logical volumes. We were in our university, we were very much familiar with LVMs and logical volume manager, and so we actually want to move from ZFS to logical volume manager. And apart from that, for HED kind of use cases, we don't want to create LVMs and create some level of performance impact. We want to have a use case to support partitions as well. So the partitions use case is provided via device local PV, and LVMs provided via LVM local PV plugins. And ZFS still being provided via ZFS local PV plugin by OpenABS. Apart from changing the volume manager, we also added a couple of features in the existing plugins for our enterprise to make it enterprise ready. One is a multi-tenancy support. So let's say if you take a SSD disk and you create a LVM over it and you create logical volumes in that SSD and give it to and mount them to pods. Before this multi-tenancy support, there are problems of one pod can take up all the IOPS in the disk and start with neighbor pods. So to avoid the problem, we kind of allocate amount of IOPS based on the storage size of the logical volume assigned to that particular pod, so that this makes sure there's no noisy neighbor issue. And we also added multiple support where earlier if you have multiple SSDs in the same Kubernetes node, you have to create a single logical LVM and you create logical volumes in that LVM and connect to and on them to pods. But the problem with that is if one of the SSDs fail, then all the logical volumes in that particular node will fail because the logical volume spans across both the SSDs. And now with multiple support, we can have two separate one logical volume per SSD, and and logical volume can be created within these SSDs and being provisioned to the pods. So if one SSD fails, only the logical volumes in that particular SSD will get impacted. And as I said before, we also for HDD we want to support logical manager partitions. So that is a HDD device local PV plugin, and also we also made for pod scheduling storage capacity. Earlier pod scheduling is before 1.19 release, the Kubernetes scheduler either schedules pod only based on CPU and memory, or if you want to use the volume binding mode as immediate, the CSA plugin can schedule can create the PV wherever it deems fit. In both the cases, there are limitations where in case of Kubernetes scheduler, if Kubernetes schedules a pod where there's no capacity, the pod will be in pending state, or if the storage plugin provision the PV in the place where there's no CPU or memory, your pod will get into pending state. Now in 1.19 Kubernetes version onwards, the upstream scheduler provides scheduling using storage capacity also as one of the parameter while scheduling. To use that as a parameter, it needs some data from the OpenABS plugin and find out what is the free capacity for per storage class in each and every node. So that particular information is actually gathered by this feature and provided to the upstream Kubernetes scheduler, so that the scheduling happens in much more holistic mode. And this is the current state of affairs. So as we have said before, we are part of infrastructure team in Flipkart. We have platforms actually. We have a platform team which actually runs over infrastructure, and we have application teams running over the platform and running the applications over it. Currently, we have a couple of our platform services already on board to our stateful support in Kubernetes. So one is distributed SQL as a service, where they provide a distributed SQL as a construct to the application users. And we also have messaging as a service platform being onboarded on the stateful Kubernetes cluster. Apart from that, we also evaluating data store operators for all the data store the technologies we use within Flipkart. We don't want multiple data store operators used for the same data store and people varying in the wheel across these data store operators. So we want to make sure for one particular database, only one data store operator is used. So we are kind of evaluating all the current available data store in open source and finding gaps within those data store and try to fix that gap and standardize this data store and use that as single operator for that particular database technology within Flipkart. So so we have SMEs for each of this database currently working on standardizing these data store operators and also fixing the gaps in this data store operators and providing that to the community as well. Apart from that, storage compute separation also is still work in progress. We are trying to working on the design to how to segregate storage and compute over network so that we won't have that fragmentation issue which I have explained earlier. And these are the current learnings we had so far. So as I've said before, most data store operators are not production ready. A couple of issues, a couple of gaps we have seen is that data store operators actually access cluster. They actually expect a cluster level permissions, which is a problem when you run these operators in a multi-tenant cluster. So we are working to tweak those permission issues and a couple of data store operators doesn't have a proper backup to use case to take backup of the data store to external S3 backup of backup resources out there. So that also will be worked upon. And in local storage, as I said earlier, if we have a very skewed CPU, it will lead to fragmentation, lead to waste of disk connected to the node of the bandwidth. And in case of container as a storage, there is some level of performance degradation we have seen because of this that data has been sent over network. And apart from that, we also have we also don't have a volume group construct at CSA plugin. So as CSA plugin currently consider each and every PV as a separate resource and allocate provision volumes for them. In case of network, the container and storage where we go network, these volumes can be different, should be placed in different fault domains if they're part of the same stateful set. For that, the CSA plugin has to know that multiple PVs are connected to whether by a single stateful set. And in one of the KP projects, volume constructs can actually work on. And apart from that, for the backup solutions, the only way to take backup of the current data, we have to take a snapshot to have to take the backup to an external resource. The current construct provided by upstream Kubernetes is like you take a snapshot and you take a volume clone of the snapshot and then provide a clone to the backup tool to copy the data out. It's actually assumed that the volume clone is a point-in-time operation or it's a very lightweight operation. But if you take IBM, which is predominantly used to logic volume manager in Linux, volume clone is it's a costly operation as they have to copy the data, complete data from the snapshot to another volume to create the clone, which obviously impacts backup RPO times. So we are trying to see whether we can now to export the snapshot itself to the backup tool so that I can take the snapshot and read the snapshot and take the data outside of the node and into S3 kind of backup stores. As I said, there's no first-class construct of backup solutions. And other than that, we also learned some, in case of disk failures and whatnot, there is no clear way to propagate this failure information from the node or from the CSA plugin layer to the operator or to the application layer. Currently, it is expected the operator to understand these IO failures themselves and take corrective actions of taking the PVC and creating another PVC and backfilling the data. And also in case of disk cloners, disk cloners can happen because of actual hardware problem or device level problem or even because of peak load happening on the disk. So at an operator level or the application level, there's not even a clear way to even determine the disk cloners as actually being an issue or as kind of expected. So even though we can figure out at a plugin level or at the node coordinator level that this is low because of some hardware issue, there is no clear way to propagate this information to via layers via any PVC status or annotations or labels so that the application can make a note of it and take corrective actions based on the data provided. So this is a end of our presentation. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Considering we have used OpenETS and went enterprise, made it enterprise ready and started using it at the enterprise level, we'll be happy to explain any questions for people like want to use these tools or use these plugins in their enterprise use cases, and we can even have a detailed discussion to make how to use these plugins in enterprise level use cases. Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. So in terms we're seeing a lot of stuff that's going on in the chat right now. Could the two of you just comment a little bit about some of the questions that folks are asking?
Neeraj, you want to take that?
A question by Nuno.
You have any specific question, Bart, or you want to go through each one and explain in detail?
Oh, no. Just maybe ones that I don't know from the different ones that we see here. I mean, we see because we had quite a few. Let's see. So how do you manage RBAC? Do you have a proprietary solution?
So we have an internal service that does Auth0 and Auth0 in our private cloud, and it is OIDC compliant. So we directly integrate that service using kubectl OIDC support. Also, what we try to do is we translate these RBAC policies that exist in an external system into Kubernetes native RBAC policies.
Okay. Very, very good. A question that we just got right here. If you were to redo the migration, would there be anything that you would have done differently this time around based on what you know now?
So just a clarification, we are in the process of doing this migration right now. And so only time will tell whether this was the right approach or not.
All right. I guess with that in mind, though, perhaps I know you talked about some of the challenges, but what was the aspect that was most challenging about the migration?
Praveen, you want to take that question?
Yeah. So if we see in the current setup, as Neeraj said, the migration had to start, and effectively it is currently based mostly on copy-based migration. So to convince customers, because this is coming at some cost to the customers to at some level of operational cost to move the data from VMworld to Kubernetes World. We are working on solution whether in-place migration is possible by taking the logical volumes and then try to connect directly to Kubernetes and massage the Kubernetes CRDs to recognize that volume, but that is still in some kind of thought process state. We are not there yet, but so the significant challenge is the copy-based migration part. As of now, it is any customer want to use the stateful support, they'll be asked to copy the data from the current VM to Kubernetes. So convincing the customer and the operational cost involved with it is a significant challenge.
All right. And another question that we got here, do you monitor disk performance using any tools?
Not exactly. We actually have our internal scripts and tools which actually monitor these data and push to our Prometheus and our Cosmos backends. So currently the disk slowness or these things are identified just with the IO tools, which is provided inbuilt with Linux itself, not any separate tools as such.
Okay. And is there a list of which data store operators are production ready?
Sure, that's a loaded question. But so in general, all the CNCF compliant data stores, I would assume that their operators are production ready, and a few of the other ones. But then there are data stores like HBase, etc., for which there is no production ready setup. And even for saying that a data store operator is production ready, there is some ambiguity to that, right? So because it might work in some production setup, it wouldn't want in some, right? What the biggest challenge that we see in some of these data store operators is the assumption that they make about the cluster administrator and the data store stack operator being the same persona. In large multi-tenant clusters, that might not be true, right? So the privilege model that these data stores take is at the same level as the cluster admin, right? Which typically we find problematic, and we do have to redo those privileges and make them move at a specific namespace level.
Okay. Next question, because I think we got time for probably 2 more questions. What overhead do you use for deploying on JBOD and protecting against multi-disk failures?
There's no much of an overhead as such. We actually, before JBOD, we were using direct attached storage to provision VMs. When we moved to JBOD, there's hardly much of a difference because when we bought the JBODs, the disk performance also is in the next class generation, so that kind of offset it for any kind of cabling overheads. For multi-disk failures, we actually let the application to handle the disk failures. Currently, the infrastructure doesn't support durability as a construct in our setup. So it is expected any applications is using it. Like for example, MySQL is expected to have slaves. If it's HDFS is supposed to have replicas. If it is Ceph, it is supposed to have multiple replicas to handle any disk failures. From an infrastructure standpoint, we actually make sure these replicas sits into different fault domains. So in case if the total rack fails or the total JBOD fails, we make sure there's at least more than at least one replica in some other JBOD or some other disk, which can be used to backfill the failed replicas.
All right. And one more question. Let's see. What is Flipkart using for ingress?
So right now we have our custom load balancer layer. So it is basically deployed on bare metals. It's built on top of HA proxy that has traditionally been used for virtual machines. And we used the cloud provider extensions to provide ingress through that. We have plans to move over to a service model using Istio sometime later this year. So this part will be replaced by Istio.
Okay, very, very good. I think that should be good. Once again, as a reminder, for folks that have more questions, we can continue the conversations in Slack. Very, very good presentation. Got to get a full spectrum. We had wonderful questions here. And very nice to see this really at scale. You know, I mean, like it's one thing where we're talking about in some meetups, you know, like there's this new update, there's this new version, but to actually see this being applied, and particularly in a company such as Flipkart, where I can only imagine the amount of transactions that are going on, the amount of visitors to the website, all the things to see that in real life is very, very exciting for our community. And once again, a perfect example of how data is working on Kubernetes, that's stateful workloads, databases, et cetera, that this can be done. It is being done by wonderful engineers such as yourselves. Thank you very much for your time today, and look forward to continuing the conversations in Slack.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Cheers. And thank you once again to our amazing audience for all the great questions you're asking here in YouTube. As I said as well, too, you can tag speakers directly on Slack.